Hello and welcome back. Today is really fun. I am part of a collaboration called Jam It Up June. This was started by Tony at Kettle Kitchen, and there are 30 days of jam, jelly, all of those things, videos, and all different channels. And I could list them all, but we'd be here forever. So I am going to put a list below. Please go click on their links, go check out their channels, subscribe, watch their videos, and there's going to be giveaways, multiples. And so the more you watch, the more you comment on, the better your chances of winning some really great prizes. So thank you, Tony. I'm really excited about this one. And what I am going to make is I'm using what's fresh in season, and it's so good. They're so tasty. And that is Honeyed Apricot Jalapeño Jam. Now the jalapenos aren't really in season, but I'm able to get fresh ones all year long. So those I've got, and these apricots are just beautiful, and they're sweet. They're so good. So I've got all of my ingredients here. We're going to get started making honeyed apricot jalapeno jam. The first thing I need to do is weigh out 2.5 pounds of fresh ripe apricots, and take the stem off, cut them in half, and remove the pit. Again, I've eaten a few of these. They are so sweet. Now, you don't have to skin the apricots because with jam, it's gonna really cook down and you're not gonna notice it like you would with peaches. So I'm not gonna bother peeling them. But what you do wanna do is chop these pretty fine. And I've got this recipe out of the Pomonas Pectin cookbook. And I love their cookbook, and I love Pomonas Pectin. And that is usually my go-to for pectin. Although my coffee jelly, I had to use a different kind because I had read that it just doesn't set up with coffee. And I still had challenges. But go check that video out because that was really interesting. It was a lot of fun and it tastes really good. So you want to chop them up fairly small. Now, as part of this, I'm also working on several videos to review canning lids, because if you've done any canning in the last few years, you know that getting good quality lids has been a challenge. So what I'm doing is I am trying different canning lids and showing you as I use them, and we're just gonna do a review and talk about how they work. That way, when you need to make a choice, you'll have some information to do it with. All right, I have 2.5 pounds of the apricots chopped up pretty fine. Now, the next thing that this recipe calls for is it calls for 2/3 cup of red bell pepper, and I've got these mini sweet peppers I'm going to use, and 1/3 cup of jalapeno. Now, as long as you don't go over that combined cup, you can mix them a little bit. So if I don't stick exactly with 1/3 of a cup of jalapeno, maybe add some more. I'm fine with that. So I've got red, orange, and yellow sweet peppers. and then some jalapeno. And I'm going to get these diced finely, and we need total 1 cup. I've already diced up 2.5 pounds of ripe apricots. I love this bowl, both of these bowls. These are ones I got at the flea markets when I went and visited Mrs. Lori at Whippoorwill Holler. That is so much fun. So I'm going to put in the apricots. Then I have a total of 1 cup of the finely diced sweet baby peppers and the jalapeno. Now, these are low acid. Fruits are high acid. As long as you're following an approved recipe and you stick strictly to those proportions, you'll be okay. Do not go over the 1 cup of low acid. So I did a little bit more of the jalapeno than the 130 called for, but I did a little bit less of the red, yellow, and orange baby bell peppers. And look at those colors. Isn't that pretty? And if you hear noise in the background, that's the new puppy, Bacon Bits, who is kind of rambunctious. Now I've measured out 2/3 cup of bottled lime juice. You use bottled lime or lemon juice when you're canning because it's got a consistent acidity of 5%. If you're using fresh, it may not be the same. So I'm going to take 4 tablespoons of that 2/3 cup, which basically leaves me right at about 1/2 cup. Pretty close. I'm going to stir that up well. Then I'm going to cover this and put it over high heat and bring it to a boil. I forgot to mention, when you're cutting up hot peppers like the jalapeno, it's a good idea to wear gloves. Now turn that over high heat and I'm going to bring it to a boil. All right, it's come to a boil. Now I'm going to reduce the heat and let it simmer for 15 minutes, still covered. Now while that's simmering, I want to show you, these are the Denali Canning Lids. And I haven't opened them yet. We'll do that right now. So these are regular mouth because I'm going to be canning 1/2 pints. They come wrapped in plastic. That's what they look like. And there's the underside. Now, okay, it is popping just a bit. I like that because to me that's kind of my first clue, is looking at it and seeing if it's popped down. So here's the lid. It looks like it has an okay amount of sealant. It's not real wide, but it should be enough. So I'm gonna wash these. We're gonna use these for this honeyed apricot jalapeno jam. While we're waiting for this to finish simmering, I'm going to combine 1 cup of honey in a bowl. And to that, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of Pomonas Pectin. Now, Pomonas Pectin is different from other pectins. It's activated by calcium water. So you get a package of calcium powder in addition to your Pomonas Pectin. So I've got that mixed up in a little container here. But we're not adding that yet. Right now we're just going to add together the honey and the Pomonas Pectin. Now, Pomonas Pectin also will allow you to use less sugar or honey or whatever your sweetener than most pectin. Sometimes you can just use no sugar. But for something like this where you're doing peppers along with it, you probably want sweetener in it. So I've combined those two, and I'm just going to set that aside. It's been 15 minutes, and I'm going to turn the heat off. And this is what it looks like. So now we're just going to mash this, and I don't think it's going to take much effort because it's actually pretty well cooked down. Now I'm going to measure out 4 cups. And I got almost exactly 4 cups. If you have any left over, use it for some other purpose. I have my 4 cups of the fruit and pepper mixture, and I'm going to put that back in the pot. To that, I'm going to add the remaining lime juice, which was 2/3 cup minus 4 tablespoons that we added when we cooked this. Now we're also going to add our calcium water, and you can see it's kind of settled here at the bottom. So you just shake it up well. And we're going to add 4 teaspoons of the calcium water. Now the remainder of this will go in my refrigerator and be ready for me to use it next time. Now we're going to put it back over high heat and bring it to a boil. Be sure and have your honey and pectin mixture ready mixed and ready to put in. Now I've decided that I want to blend this a little bit finer than just mashing it. So I have my immersion blender. I don't want to completely puree this. I want to be able to see some of the peppers and have some chunks, but I did want it a little bit finer, so we're at a boil. So we're going to slowly add the honey and pectin. it doesn't want to go slow, but and still stir it at the same time. And we want to bring this back to a full boil. We need to make sure and fully dissolve the pectin. Once you've brought it back to a boil, you want to boil it for 1 to 2 minutes. I think that this is ready, and I'm going to turn off the heat. Now I'm going to get my canning jars and start filling them. And because I'm off grid, I don't heat my jars in the dishwasher. I heat them in the steam canner, which is what I'm using today. I like the steam canner more than I like water bath because you don't have to use as much water. It doesn't take as long. And you always use hot jars and hot canner when you're putting hot product in it. You sure don't want to give it temperature shock and have your jar break. So I'm going to fill this to about 1/4 inch headspace. And if you have one of these handy tools, that is 1/4 is that first notch. So we've got that there. I have a bowl of water and paper towel. And I'm going to thoroughly clean the rim and around the threads just to make sure they're not sticky. Clean lid, new lids, don't reuse. Center it on the jar. And fingertip tight. Don't over tighten it. And that's what it looks like. So I'm going to put that in the canner and get another jar. Clean the rim, and before you put your jars into the canner or dishwasher to heat, be sure and check, run your finger around the rim and make sure there's no chips, no cracks. Inspect the jar visually, make sure there's no flaws. It only takes a minute, but it sure can save you a lot of frustration. Fingertip tight, and be careful because the jars are very hot. Into the canner. I'm going to finish filling my jars and we'll come back. The recipe said it will make 4 to 5 half pints of the jam, and this made 5 pints. And I think I've got just enough left to have a taste left in the pan. Number 5. I have all my jars in the canner, and I'm going to process 10 minutes at a full heat. And on a steam canner is not the same. It usually is a rolling boil, but you want it to, mine has a gauge, tells you when it's ready to start timing. So for mine, I'm going to look at the gauge, but if you're doing water bath, you want a full rolling boil, and then you start your timer. The recipe calls for 10 minutes. I'm at 5,200 feet, so I'm going to process an additional 10 minutes, so 20 minutes total. And while we wait for that to come up to temperature, we're going to take a taste of this. And it's already setting up, so it looks beautiful. Now, I don't expect this to be sweet. I'm guessing it's going to be a savory jam, which is something I love because then you can use it in a recipe. So that's what it looks like. Nice and thick. You can see it standing up. Let's take a taste. I don't know how hot it's going to be, but I don't think it's going to be real sweet. Even though the apricots were sweet and added a cup of honey, we'll see. So let's take a taste. Really good. You really taste the apricots. I'm not getting a lot of heat though. In fact, almost none. If I did this again, personally, I would probably add 2/3 cup of jalapeno and 1/3 cup of the sweet peppers. But really strong apricot taste. And it's very slightly sweet, but not a lot. This would be amazing on chicken. It would really be amazing to baste the chicken with this after it's been baking and almost done. It would just, oh, it would be so good. That's what I think I'm going to be doing with this. So let's let the steam canner come up to full temperature. Time it, in my case, for 20 minutes, and then we'll come back. My timer has gone off, and you can see that the gauge is right in the middle of the green, which is where I wanted it to be. So I'm going to turn off the canner, and I'm going to let it sit covered for 5 minutes. It's been 5 minutes, so now I'm going to take the lid off. Always stand clear when you take a lid off of a canner, any kind of canner, because of the steam. So there's my 5 half pints. I'm going to let it sit for another 5 minutes. Now, why am I doing this? What I have learned over the years is that if you take the jars out of the canner too quickly, there's too much of a temperature difference and you tend to get siphoning. So some of your jam or whatever it is you're canning will come out between the lid and the ring and come out of the jar. It can cause the jar not to seal, but it just isn't good. You lose some product. Have a little patience and take your time. I left these jars overnight to sit undisturbed. Now we're going to check them out. So one thing you'll usually notice is if you make your lids just finger tight, that when they come out of the canner, they're usually pretty loose, and these are. So, like I always do, I'm gonna hold it by the edge. Let's see if I can show you closer. Just by the edge of the lid. And that one has a good seal. Then this one. Now, I will say, use caution on these lids. The edges are very sharp. When I was washing them, it actually slightly cut my finger, not enough to bleed, but you can see where the cut is on my thumb, and I can feel it. It's tender. So if you're on blood thinners, you really want to use caution because these edges are sharp. That one's sealed. That one's sealed. And you notice I always hold my hand under it just in case. So I really don't want to clean it up. This one I'm going to tell you I don't think is sealed because the button is popped up. So I'm really not expecting it to be sealed well. And it's not. So now we're going to try and determine why. This is the only one of the 5 jars that didn't seal. And so what I'm going to do first is, I see where it got the jam on it as I pulled it off, but it's not dried there, so I don't think that that was under the rim. And I'm going to put this in another jar, and as long as and it gelled up really well. As long as you take care of this within 24 hours, your product should be okay to eat. Just put it in the refrigerator and use it up soon. So I'll be using this to make some chicken or something. So I'm going to get this in another jar. I could store it in this jar, but what we want to do is find out, if we can, why it didn't seal. Did I miss a chip on the edge of the jar? I don't see any problem on the lid itself. The lid looks okay. And again, I only see where it just got the jam on it when I lifted the lid, and it kind of flopped a little. So I don't see anything there. But what we're going to do is try and figure this out. So I'm going to go rinse this out, and then we're going to look at the jar and we're going to check the rim very carefully. So I just rinsed this out. I didn't really wash it, just rinsed it. And I'm gonna look at the jar just to see if I see anything that could have caused a failure. And I don't see any flaws in the jar itself. Now we'll take and run our finger around the rim, and I'm not feeling anything there. The rim feels smooth. If it had a fine crack or chip, you would feel it. And that could cause a failure, but I'm not seeing or feeling anything with this jar. So why did it fail? I don't know. Again, I don't see anything telltale on the lid. I'm going to rinse this off just so we can see better. So I don't see a reason that this failed. It just did. So I wanted to be sure and show you that, and show you that I don't believe I missed anything when I was canning. The lid was about the same. The ring was on about the same as all the others. It felt no different. So I don't know why it failed, but there you go. So this one will go in the refrigerator and be used the next few days. These 4 will go on the shelf, and I'll keep an eye on them, but they'll probably be fine. So that's what I have to show you. So these are the Denali Canning Lids. This is regular mouth. I have not used the wide mouth. And I used Pomonas Universal Pectin, and I buy in bulk. It costs less and it stores. So unlike regular pectin that has a shorter shelf life, this will store, keep it cool and dry, and it should be fine. So there you go. Honeyed Apricot Jalapeno Jam. Thank you, Tony, and all of the other channels for this opportunity to be a part of this collaboration. And be sure and go below and check out all those channels. Subscribe. Go to the playlist. I believe that's going to be on Kettle Kitchen. And you want to watch all the videos. Comment on all of them. And I think there's going to be a live stream on the 30th on Tony's Kettle Kitchen channel to wrap up this collaboration. But there will be a number of giveaways. I'm not sure, but I think he's doing some every week, and then he's doing a big one at the end. So be sure and comment and watch everything. No telling how many great recipes you're going to find, or knowledge, because that's part of this, is just learning more and being able to do more. So thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope that this gave you some good information. God bless, and we'll talk soon.